Imagine waking up one morning, hosing down the outside of your house like you're washing a car, wiping the interior walls with a damp cloth, and never, not once in your entire life, having to pick up a paintbrush. No termites, no rot, no mold. A house that laughs at fire and shrugs off pests. That house already existed. It was built right here in America, and the government pumped over $37 million into it. So why have most people never heard of it? Welcome to the story of the Lustron Home, the all-steel, porcelain-enameled house that was supposed to solve America's housing crisis, became one of the most jaw-dropping industrial experiments in this country's history, and then vanished almost overnight. Stay with me through this whole video, because toward the end, I'm going to show you what these homes are actually selling for right now, in 2026, and the answer might genuinely surprise you. Before we go any further, if you're new here, this channel is all about affordable and alternative housing done honestly. No fluff, no sponsor hype, just real information to help you think differently about where and how you live. Hit subscribe and tap the bell so you never miss a video. Okay, let's get into this. To understand why the Lustron Home existed, you have to understand what America looked like in 1945 and 1946. World War II had just ended. Millions of young men, more than 12 million American service members, were coming home. They were ready to get married, start families, and live the American dream. There was just one enormous problem. There were almost no houses for them to live in. Think about this for a second. The Great Depression hit in 1929 and essentially froze new home construction for over a decade. Then the war hit, and all the steel, lumber, and labor got redirected to the war effort for another 5 years. So by the time the war ended in 1945, America had gone nearly 20 years with almost no new residential construction. Veterans were sleeping in cars. They were bunking in chicken coops, attics, garages, and converted boxcars. It wasn't an exaggeration or propaganda. It was a genuine national emergency. President Truman called it exactly that and launched emergency federal programs to find solutions fast. Enter Carl Strandland. Carl Strandland was not an architect. He was an industrial inventor and entrepreneur from Chicago who ran the Chicago Vitreous Enamel Product Company. His original idea, before the housing crisis hit, was to produce prefabricated gas stations using porcelain-enameled steel panels. Slick, durable, low-maintenance gas stations that could be shipped anywhere and assembled quickly. But when the federal government announced it was looking for emergency housing solutions and would not allocate steel for gas stations, Strandland had a pivot moment. He looked at his enameling process, looked at the housing shortage, and thought, what if I use this same material to build homes instead? The idea was genuinely brilliant. Porcelain-enameled steel was already proven technology. It was the same material used to make White Castle restaurants, those iconic little white buildings that you still see today, decades after they were first built. The material did not rust. It did not rot. It did not need paint. It could be cleaned with a hose. And if you manufactured it on an assembly line, you could theoretically build houses faster and cheaper than any stick frame contractor in the country. Strandland pitched the idea directly to President Truman's Reconstruction Finance Corporation, the federal agency handling emergency economic programs. The story goes that his loan application was approved just 15 minutes before the agency's emergency powers were set to expire. 15 minutes. That's how close this whole thing came to never existing at all. In January 1947, the newly formed Lustron Corporation announced it had received a $12.5 million loan to begin manufacturing. That number would eventually grow to over $37 million in total government loans, making this, by the way, one of the very first venture capital investments ever made by the federal government of the United States. With funding secured, Strandland needed a facility. He got an enormous one, a former World War II aircraft manufacturing plant in Columbus, Ohio, that had been used to build Curtiss-Wright fighter planes. 25 acres, 8 miles of automated conveyor lines running through the building, 11 enameling furnaces, each one more than 180 feet long. The scale of this operation was staggering. The plan was to run this factory like a car plant. Raw steel on one end, fully engineered homes out the other, loaded on a custom-built Lustron trucks, and shipped directly to job sites across the country. And the ambition matched the scale. Strandland's targets were almost comically optimistic. 15,000 homes in 1947, 30,000 in 1948, ramping up to 400 homes per day by the end of that year. That's not a housing project. That's a housing revolution. Strandland also hired a genuine pedigree architect to design the homes. MIT professor Carl Koch, who would later become famous for his tech-built modular homes, was brought on to develop the next generation of Lustron designs. The fact that this level of architectural talent was involved tells you how seriously people took this project. Okay, so what exactly was a Lustron home? Let me paint the picture. A Lustron was a one-story, ranch-style house with no basement, built almost entirely from porcelain-enameled steel. We're talking exterior walls, interior walls, ceiling panels, roof tiles, all steel. The frame was steel. The built-in cabinets were steel. The built-in closets were steel. Even the vanity in the master bedroom was steel. The average home consisted of roughly 3,300 individual parts and weighed in at about 12 tons of steel plus 1 ton of enamel. Every single component was manufactured on that Columbus assembly line, given its own serial number, packed onto a specially designed Lustron truck, and shipped to a local distributor. A contractor would then assemble the house on-site on a poured concrete slab in, theoretically, about 3 days. In reality, it often took closer to 2 weeks, but even 2 weeks to erect a complete house is remarkable. There were several models to choose from. The flagship was the Westchester Deluxe, the biggest and most feature-rich option, running about 1,100 square feet with 2 bedrooms and a separate kitchen and dining room. A built-in china cabinet served as a partition between the dining room and kitchen. There were also the standard Westchester, the Newport, and the smaller Meadowbrook model. Most had 1 bathroom, 7 closets, which was actually a lot for a house that size, and several featured pocket doors that slid right into the steel walls. The exterior came in 4 colors: surf blue, dove gray, maize yellow, and desert tan. Every home had a distinctive spiral steel trellis at the corner of the covered porch, a design quirk that became the Lustron's calling card and still lets preservationists spot them from the street today. Inside, because the walls were steel, you could not hang a picture with a nail. You used magnets. People had magnetic knife racks in the kitchen, magnetic spice holders, magnetic everything. And when you wanted to clean the house, damp cloth on the walls, hose on the outside. Done. One of the wildest features was a combination appliance called the Thor, a single machine that functioned as both a dishwasher and a clothes washing machine. Built into the kitchen, it was one of the strangest, most ambitious appliance ideas of the era, and most owners eventually got rid of it because it was notoriously difficult to use. But the fact that it was included at all tells you how deeply the Lustron team was committed to the idea of a fully integrated, futuristic, maintenance-free home. The homes also featured radiant ceiling heat in some models, a heating system embedded right into the steel ceiling panels. It sounded futuristic, and it was, but there was a fundamental physics problem: heat rises. That meant the ceiling got toasty while the floor stayed cold, leaving many owners with warm heads and freezing feet. It is exactly why so many of those systems were eventually ripped out and replaced with conventional forced air heating. When the first Lustron model home opened to the public in Chicago on August 11, 1948, Americans were immediately fascinated. The model homes were subsequently toured in major cities all across the eastern half of the country, and by the end of 1949, over 2 million people had visited Lustron. 2 million. That's enormous for a product launch in 1948. The company received 20,000 orders. The press was enthusiastic. The public was excited. Everything looked like it was going to work. The original price point was between $8,500 and $9,500, about 25% less than a comparable conventionally built home. For a veteran who just got back from the Pacific and wanted a simple, durable starter home, that was a compelling offer. But by November of 1949, the average selling price had climbed to $10,500. And that was before you added the concrete foundation, the plumbing rough-in, the electrical, and the gas line, none of which were included in the kit. At a time when a similar-sized stick-frame home was going for around $6,500 all in, the Lustron's value proposition was starting to crack. Here's where the story gets really interesting, and honestly a little heartbreaking. The Lustron Corporation was up against forces it probably never fully anticipated. First, banks. Traditional lenders did not want to finance prefabricated steel homes because they had no idea how to appraise them. There were no comparable sales. There was no established resale market. So many buyers who wanted a Lustron simply could not get a mortgage for one. Second, building codes. Local zoning ordinances across the country had been written for stick frame construction and did not account for steel homes at all. In some towns, the codes literally prohibited homes with steel chimneys, which was what the Lustron had. That wasn't a minor inconvenience. It meant the home could not legally be built in those municipalities at all. Third, the traditional housing industry. There are credible accounts suggesting that established home builders and contractors organized opposition to Lustron, viewing it as an existential threat to the conventional construction sector. Historians have drawn a direct parallel to what happened to Preston Tucker and his revolutionary automobile at roughly the same time. Both men were innovators with genuine products, and both ran into what looks like coordinated institutional resistance. The Preston Tucker comparison is especially striking because Strandland's original factory choice, the Dodge Chicago aircraft engine plant in Illinois, was actually the same factory that Tucker ended up using to build his cars. Strandland was bumped to Columbus. Tucker got to Chicago. Both businesses failed within years of each other. Make of that what you will. Fourth, the production numbers never came close to the targets. The factory was supposed to produce 400 homes a day. At its peak, it was doing closer to 30. Assembly on-site was taking longer than planned. Costs were escalating. The loans from the government were not being repaid. By February 1950, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation repossessed the company. The Lustron Corporation declared bankruptcy shortly after. By the time it was over, the factory had produced approximately 2,498 homes, about 5% of what Strandland had promised. 5%. MIT architect Carl Koch, who had been hired to design the next generation of Lustrons, a design that was never produced, later reflected on the whole experience with a quote that I think is one of the most honest assessments of any failed innovation I've ever read. He said, "Seldom has there occurred a like mixture of idealism, greed, efficiency, stupidity, potential social good, and political evil. Seldom, surely, has a good idea come so close to realization and been so decisively slugged. That is a man who watched something real get destroyed, and he knew exactly what he was watching." Here is where the Lustron story takes a turn that nobody expected. The home survived. The company is gone. The factory is gone. The trucks are gone. Carl Strandland is gone. But those 2,498 steel homes, many of them are still standing, still occupied, still functioning more than 75 years later. Current estimates put the surviving count at somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 Lustron homes spread across 36 states, including Alaska. Some even ended up in Venezuela, built for families of American oil industry workers. The largest concentration in a single location is at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia, where 60 Lustrons were installed together. A fully restored Westchester Deluxe model was disassembled and rebuilt inside the Ohio History Connection in Columbus, Ohio in 2013, where it has been on public display as a museum piece. Before that, it briefly appeared partially assembled at the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan. Think about that. A prefabricated steel house that sold for under $10,000 in 1949 is now displayed at MoMA. Several Lustrons have been added to the National Register of Historic Places. Preservation groups are actively working to document and save remaining homes. There is even a community of dedicated Lustron owners who maintain their homes in original or near-original condition, sharing parts, tracking down replacement panels, and refusing to cover those distinctive porcelain exteriors with modern vinyl siding. And the reason the homes have lasted? That original engineering. The porcelain-enameled steel does not rust in normal conditions. It does not rot. It does not attract termites. It does not grow mold. Owners who have kept their Lustrons original report genuinely minimal maintenance costs. One owner, a former contractor who spent 25 years building conventional wood homes, said that after moving into his Lustron, he got rid of all his tools because he simply did not need them anymore. Now, here's the part one promised you at the beginning. What these homes are actually selling for right now in 2026. The answer is, it depends enormously on location and condition, but in general, well-preserved Lustrons are commanding surprisingly strong prices for their size. In Columbus, Ohio, the city where the homes were manufactured and where several clusters remain, a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom Lustron on Arden Road in the Clintonville neighborhood was listed in mid-2025 at $379,900 for exactly 1,021 square feet. It closed successfully in August 2025 at that price. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, where a famous cluster of 6 Lustrons sits on a single block of Nicollet Avenue, these homes have routinely cleared the mid-$300,000 mark, and as of June 2026, a Dove Gray model on that same block is listed at $439,000. These are 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom steel homes built in 1949, and they are selling for nearly $500,000 in today's market. Let that sink in for a second. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, another example was listed at $289,900. And in Iowa, a more rural example was available for under $80,000, though in considerably rougher shape. So the range is broad, but the trend is clear. Lustrons that have been maintained in good condition, especially in urban markets, are not cheap. They are not the bargain starter homes they were originally designed to be. They have become collector pieces, architectural curiosities that people pay a premium for specifically because of their story, their material, and their rarity. The challenge for buyers is real estate financing. The same problem that plagued Lustron sales in 1949 still exists in some form today. Some lenders are cautious about non-conventional construction types. That said, Lustrons that are properly appraised and in good condition can and do qualify for conventional mortgages. If you are seriously considering buying one, make sure your realtor and lender have experience with historic or non-standard property types, because a general practitioner who has never dealt with an enameled steel house may struggle to appraise it accurately. Also be aware of the unique maintenance considerations. The porcelain panels are highly durable, but they are not indestructible. If a panel gets cracked or chipped, sourcing a matching replacement is a serious challenge, because no new Lustron panels have been manufactured since 1950. The preservation community has developed some creative solutions: salvage operations from demolished homes, careful color matching for limited repairs, but is something any prospective buyer should understand going in. I want to zoom out for a minute and talk about what the Lustron story actually means, because I think it is more relevant today than it has ever been. We are, right now in 2026, in the middle of the worst housing affordability crisis in American history. Home prices have far outpaced wages for 2 decades. Builders are struggling with material costs and labor shortages. Millions of first-time buyers are completely priced out of homeownership in major markets. The problems Carl Strandland was trying to solve in 1946 are the exact same problems we are trying to solve right now. And the solutions being discussed, factory-built homes, modular construction, prefabricated panels, assembly line efficiency, reducing on-site labor, are the exact same solutions Strandland proposed. The difference is that today's prefab and modular housing industry is enormous, mature, and growing fast. Companies are doing things with cross-laminated timber, 3D printed concrete, and factory-built modules that would have seemed like science fiction even 20 years ago. The Lustron was the ancestor of all of that. It was the proof of concept that showed factory-built homes were technically viable, even if the business model collapsed. The other thing the Lustron story illustrates is how powerful institutional resistance can be. Zoning codes that were written for stick-frame homes, banks that could not appraise non-standard construction, an existing industry that felt threatened. These are not uniquely 1940s problems. These are the exact barriers that today's ADU builders, tiny home manufacturers, and modular housing companies run into every single day. If Carl Strandland were pitching the Lustron today, he would still be fighting local zoning boards. He would still be arguing with appraisers. He would still be dealing with a conventional home building industry that does not want competition. Technology has changed dramatically. The structural resistance to change has not. The Lustron Home was, in the words of a former resident, a promise for the future. In a lot of ways, it still is. Somewhere in your city or a city near you, there's a 75-year-old steel house still standing exactly where it was assembled in 2 weeks on a concrete slab in 1949. Its original porcelain panels are still intact. Its built-in steel closets still slide open. Its distinctive little spiral trellis is still bolted to the corner of the porch. And inside, someone is living in it, paying a fraction of the maintenance costs their neighbors pay, hanging pictures with magnets, and maybe not even knowing they live in one of the most audacious housing experiments America ever attempted. About 1,200 to 1,500 of these homes are still out there. Each one is a piece of industrial history, a time capsule of post-war optimism, and a reminder that the ideas we need to solve today's housing crisis are not always new. Sometimes they are just ideas that got slugged once and need someone to try again. If you found this video interesting, I'd really appreciate a like. It genuinely helps more people find this channel. And if you want to see more deep dives into alternative and affordable housing history and strategy, subscribe and stick around. I got a lot more coming. Until next time, build smart, live well, and think outside the conventional box.